You're listening to The Ripple Affect with your hosts, Cheech and Nibby, a podcast that explores how individual change has the capacity to affect the whole.
From neuroscience to donuts, we're two sisters with a deep curiosity for ancient wisdom and modern knowledge, and we're obsessed with learning alongside you because we don't know. Let's dive in. This is our first ever bonus. It was the end of episode 1, where we dove deeper into resources, what we're reading, what's been helpful for us, etc.
Full disclosure, this was recorded in 2021, so the books and topics might not necessarily be current, but we feel they still have value. We promise you will leave this episode with something to add to your Audible account.
Once again, you're about to join right into the conversation where Issa asks me what has supported my change. Here we go.
Maybe if you could just name off a few things that you think really helped you in your change and in your, group of support system, and what those looked like for you and what you explored while you were going through these changes. And I know like the overall topic is like, oh, how do you change the world? You change yourself. And I think changing yourself, like we've just discussed, isn't as easy as it sounds. And I think that we individually have had different communities that have helped us through our change. And I'm just curious if you would share some of your community and your exploration in that. And maybe we could just even like rapid fire off and go into them deeper in further episodes.
Sure. Yeah, I would love that because I'd love to bring in some of these people, in fact, because I think that is think about that as children, like when we're raising children, everyone's heard that. Oh, it takes a village. And I think like that doesn't stop. It doesn't it's not a cutoff age of like 18 and then you don't need your village anymore. It's like,
no, social is a pillar. It is a pillar of well-being. Your social interaction is part of your well-being, your wellness, your health.
Yeah. And I think that social piece extends out. I think people associate social with friendships. And I've recognized that the social being in us requires a lot of different types of relationships. Like you mentioned, coaches and therapists and friendships and mentors and authors that you connect with and these different things. So I think for me, I noticed the biggest changes when I started reading. And I will share a little hack. The way that I started reading was I was like, okay, I'm just going to read for 15 minutes a day. And I know the 5-minute hack or 2-minute hack is even better, just starting with 2. But for me, I was like, I always wanted to be a reader. I always wanted to be someone who read every day or finished a certain amount of books in a year or whatever that was. And I had these lists and they never got crossed off. And I didn't read. I think I got traumatized from reading so much in college that I just was like, don't want to do that anymore.
Exactly like that.
Forced reading. I was like, fuck that. But I just put that down and I would put a timer and I, got a book and started to read, and then found audiobooks and really found that I'm an auditory learner. And so it really helped me to read in that way. And I bring up reading as my first kind of example of what was a tool that helped me change, because it was, and I read a lot of nonfiction, predominantly nonfiction, but I know, because I'm also a creative in the entertainment industry, that stories have so much power. Be clear, that you can learn a lot from fiction, and you find those authors that are weaving these very nonfiction lessons of humanity and life into a beautiful story. And they're more impactful at some level. That's why movies are a huge export in our country and will always be, and why some types of form of storytelling, and the Greeks had plays, and it's been around. But I digress just to say that for me, it's nonfiction. And so
what books?
So that's what I was going into, is Brene Brown was a huge influence. I've mentioned her a couple of times. Power of Vulnerability is actually an audio recording of one of the talks she gave in a program that she was teaching. So you basically and I just felt like it was a succinct version of her work at the time. Power of Vulnerability was one. And then I literally was looking in my file of books that I've read, and I was like, I read her Braving the Wilderness, Rising Strong, her research. And that was for me really important, was to feel the trust, I needed data, I needed research, I needed someone who wasn't just, talking about their opinions, even though that's ironic because that's what I'm doing right now. It's all good. This is for me. But yeah, so she was a huge one. You introduced me to Pema Chodron, and I thought she was just the way that she kind of took Buddhism and made it, in a way that was helpful and understanding. I started reading a lot of books out of India, out of the sages, wisdom of the sages of the East. I personally resonated with that. Nisargadatta Maharaj was a huge piece. I started reading Stephen Walensky and quantum psychology. And listening to his YouTubes because, again, it was my resonance. But this is my point, is that everyone has a different set of circumstances in their life. But also as a being, we all have had those where words or someone we're talking to or an experience we have, it's like there's this inner opening where we go, I don't know why, but this is resonating with me deeper than anything else has. It's just this like bubble gets burst. You're like, whoa, this feels like fit for me. That's been my experience, is when you don't quite even know why, but you're like, this feels helpful. So I've just trusted a lot of my instincts and intuition, and I encourage people to find that for themselves. And then on that honestly is like personal growth, I feel like spiritual side of things. And then I just really dove into authors. I mentioned James Clear, Atomic Habits, of like, oh, okay, how do you change things? Like you said, there's research about this. There's science about this. There's a huge neuroscience leap that we've made in the last 10 years of how the brain works. And to be clear, like they still don't know, but at least they have a lot more data. Yeah. It's Thinking Fast and Slow I'm reading right now. Who's another really major one? I'm trying to think. I'll think of it. So yeah, so reading. So those are some authors that I've enjoyed. And then I'll go one, you go one, and we'll go back and forth because I'm really interested in what yours. Do you want to start with books as well, or is reading even something that you would consider as a tool for change?
Absolutely. I think that it is. But for me, I use books as more inspiration than I do healing, I would say. So like, obviously I've read like Brene Brown, and it's been super eye-opening, and like, oh, that's why that's like that, kind of all those realizations, and just she speaks so clearly to what is, that you're like, it almost is relieving to read her work. Like, oh, like you kind of resound with what is, and you get to like let yourself off the hook a lot, and in ways that you didn't even know you were holding yourself on the hook. But for me, like I was just looking through my Audible, and obviously I like Daring Greatly quite a bit because I'm more in that like inspiration. I think that like The Alchemist was beautiful. And then like I like Rachel Hollis, the girl Watch Your Face. She's great inspiration.
We both talked about Untamed.
Untamed is a great book. Glennon Doyle and Love Warrior, both of them are super good books. The Intuitive Way by Penny Pierce was a good one. I liked that. I even, I'll read like Tony Robbins, and, inspirational stuff is really where I find a lot of joy in reading. I feel like I crave that. I crave that progression in a positive, optimistic turning point. Like I really like that feeling of when I'm like, ooh, that feels good. That inspiration is something that really, like you're saying, opens me up and makes me feel like connected, and it resounds in my system. I remember I had a family member who is terminally ill, and I was like, oh, I just don't want this to be true. I don't want you to accept this diagnosis. And he turned to me and he was like, oh, Isa, that's just because you're a diehard positive person. Like, that's who you are, And it was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I know that about myself now. And it's true. I am an optimistic person at my core. Like that does resound with me. So anything in inspiration really helps me to like grasp on and resonate with myself, to then be able to be like, oh yeah, like I can do this, or I am excited about that, or oh, that is a cool thing I can try and explore and play with. And that is, that's kind of the genre and the role books have played with for me in change. Obviously, like I love fiction too. I am always reading a fiction book like along with it. So like I was Dark Matter I read recently that was really good. It's just like totally off the wall. But anyways, yeah. So I think that definitely I would start with books. It's a really low barrier to entry to be able to start to get information that can help you, get through whatever you're going through. what is that book by Pema Chodron? It's called When Things Fall Apart. The title is a little bit misleading. It almost seems like a negative title, or like you have to be at the bottom of the barrel to pick this book up and read it. But it really isn't. No. It really isn't. And I would suggest that to everybody right now to read. And what was
Untethered Soul.
Untethered Soul.
Dude, I was just about to say that. Like,
one.
that was like, wait, I need to make sure that Untethered Soul, I remember handing it to my husband and being like, if you were, he agreed on this really weird deal that we did, that if I took a stand-up comedy class, he would read as many hours as I took the class. He would read that many hours in any books that I wanted. I never took the class, so he never read it. But I handed that book to him and I said, I believe this sums up so much of what I believe is true in the world. And I believe is true about human beings, and I believe is true about spirituality. Like, this is it's such an accessible read in terms of it grounds it. And I'm always looking to find that grounded spirituality.
Yeah, me too. Tangible, like the tangible spirituality, the integrative spirituality, the stuff that you can go, oh, if I'm hearing that voice in my head, then I'm the one hearing it. Then I'm not that voice, and then you start to find separation in the mind and the being that's hearing the mind. And like, that's so powerful.
I feel like those types of grounded spirituality are those pieces that are being uncovered now in science and in neuroscience. I think the more we are able to go forward as a society in science, particularly in the mind, we're proving these ancient wisdoms. I think they're coming together, which is such a beautiful, if you think of it like a heart shape, like it starts at the bottom of the heart, and they seemingly were going very far away from each other, and then they come back and curve to get to the top of the heart. I really think that is what's happening right now. And I'm happy because I am such a spiritualist and such a scientist. I appreciate those two.
I wanted to say too, like, I do have a list of books because that was just kind of off my personal Audible and off the top of my head. But there's a whole section on my shop on my website that is all books. So if you go to www.eatnourish.life, you'll see a whole list of books. And I've read all of them myself, or my niece Carly, who I really value her opinion and her outlook on life and her grounded spirituality and her seeking of more that is in that same realm. So she does some of my reading for me too. So there's a lot of good books on there.
Yes, I love it.
So back to other things that have helped you and supported you, just kind of rapid fire.
Yeah, one of the biggest things was the Akashic Records. When I found the Akashic Records, it shifted so much for me. I know that there are so many different modalities out there of exploring the unseen and, metaphysics and all these different things. But I had never done tarot readings, never gone to a psychic, I had personally in my life, it just was like, I don't feel like that's going to be what someone outside of me isn't going to bring me to my path. I just had a much more personal approach to spirituality. But when I found the Akashic Records, something, again, resonated with me. And then I just continued to study, and I'm a practitioner now of that. So that access of information, hands down, so helpful, because it's perspective. I think it's an access of a perspective that you don't get to have when you're just in your human being form.
Yeah. Can you very shortly say what it is?
I should look it up, but I have them written on my website.
What is your website?
My website's revealyourlight.com, reveal-your-light.com. It's the compendium of information and human experience. So it is, the Akashic Records is an energy that can be imprinted upon, and you can tap in to that energy and access information that is not bound by time or space, if that has any kind of...
No.
Okay.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about. But maybe we'll do a whole podcast episode on that. And maybe in an hour and a half, she might be able to tell us what it actually is.
Yes. Thanks. But the Akashic Records has been really helpful. Cranial sacral work was really, really helpful. More recently, the energy polarity therapy that we learned from Bruce Berger was just, we both took a course with him and just blew my mind. I thought that was such helpful information.
Yeah.
And then straight up therapy. Like I got so lucky and found a good therapist my first time out. I'd never done any therapy, and I found him to be so helpful. And so I continued to do that.
And what is his title? Do you know?
No. I don't know. I'll have to look
I
that
wonder
up.
if he's a psychologist, of what type of psychologist and what type of psychology he practices.
I know he talked to, because I asked him once about it, behavioral and cognitive, and he does both. He believes in both.
That's awesome.
Which I didn't know anything about it, but again, I just felt like ultimately for me to boil it down really simply, why therapy was helpful was I recognized being now look back, and I was never in a space where I really felt safe enough to just tell the truth. Not even like big, huge truths, but simple truths. And just not lie to myself, not lie to anyone, just say like, this is what it is. And then also have it held with zero consequence. Just like that. Yep. It's a professional, the environment of therapy I felt was so helpful that I just came really late to. And then honestly, the other things that have helped me, and this sounds off, but like sports. I have found when I learned to surf, that was like brought me to my knees moment that really showed me my perfectionism tendencies. I remember crying on the beach. I'd gotten washed in and cried on the beach and was like so upset and frustrated. And my husband, who's like a longtime surfer, came in and so lovely and compassionate and with me and was like, what's going on? And I was like, I just remember screaming like, I just want to know how to do this.
Aww.
You know, like I felt so little into the ocean and just was getting thrashed. And so like I'm a pretty athletic person, but couldn't, you know, just brought to my knees by Mother Nature. And I remember him being like, that's the fun of it. Like that's the part where you're learning. Like you just try, and it's supposed to be fun. And I really saw how much I wasn't okay because I couldn't control it. And I was like, oh, that taught me a lot. Snowboarding taught me a lot. Boxing taught me so much about fear and control and breath and the self-belief and the way it affects my movements. Jiu-jitsu most recently really started to make me realize what my hang-ups were, why I felt so unsafe. It just seems like for me, when I play sports, there's this, or engage in those kind of activities, I feel that I'm opening myself up to learn through a physical format what's going on in my life. I always feel like there's this parallel. Like if something's showing up at jiu-jitsu, it's showing up in my life, and I can draw those parallels, and they become a way of an approach to life. And I know people who do a lot of yoga, say that.
Yeah, I've experienced that.
So for me, it's sports, I would say. Yeah. And then movies. Film and movies, TV, I think are expanding. When I find shows that resonate, like I said earlier, those storytelling pieces, I've for sure had spiritual experiences in the movie theater. And then went home and like looked up Christopher Nolan and like, what is he doing? What does he read? And
what is he taking?
Seriously. and to your point, I guess psychedelics, like back in my growing times when I was able to do particularly psychedelics through ceremony. That I feel is really been a powerful piece for me to engage on upper levels and deeper levels of things that I just couldn't really access in my own everyday consciousness. So expanding my consciousness, I feel like psychedelics and the Akashic Records, those kind of leaps of expansion in consciousness and finding alternative neurons to fire have absolutely helped me to change. So posing that question to you, I kind of rambled off a bunch of what felt like were tools or things that helped me to have significant shifts and change in my life. What were some that you feel are crucial in your growth?
I think there's a lot. It's funny when I look back at it, because some of it's like current. Like I still feel like I'm obviously in it. Like I haven't like gone through growth, and now I'm like, oh, I'm on the other end, butterfly. Like not even close, right? Like, but I think nature has been a big help. Being in nature, relating to nature, learning from nature, observing nature. Like, it's helped me to get present and stay present. It's helped like show what like real abundance looks like. It's helped show what like synergy looks like to me. Like it helps me know like, oh, I can stand next to this tree and it's okay. Like it's just stable and it's there and I can interact with it. And I've said this before. I remember thinking when the pandemic hit and it got really hard, and I was really trying to reflect on like, what have I done to really help myself be okay? And it was my gardening and being in my garden where I felt like I was safest, and that's where I went to get reprieve, serenity. And it felt like that's where I got to interact with something that was one bigger and smaller than me, and that I got to see like it change effortlessly, and it just only take what it needs, and just, give without, you cut a freaking thing of kale off and it just keeps going. It just gives more, it's so giving. And I realized when I interacted with it, I could just open my heart fully, and I didn't have to worry about closing off because I knew it wouldn't hurt. There's no hurt, there's no pain that comes from interacting with nature. Like that Bob Marley quote, when it hits, you feel no pain. It's like music, I know music has helped me a lot too, to change my state. It's not a reality to feel good and great all the time, but we are in control of the actions that we can take to change our state to make us feel better. What is it? Like, no sorrow is too deep to be lessened. These things that have I get to take and utilize, and I think nature is a big one. Music is a big one, just to help me. I know some people use it like when they're sad, they listen to sad music and it helps them really feel more of that emotion. You get to hear it in other people's voices, and you find the connection of like, oh, other people feel like that too, and they've created art around it. Like, and I can create a bubble of that and really feel it. Or vice versa, when you're feeling low energy and you want to switch it out, wow, like get up, shake your body out, and like change, put some music on that makes you feel really good. I think music has helped me just in the small movements of change, like making that decision to be like, oh, I'm going to put some music on and lay on my yoga mat, or like whatever it is, just those small things. That's been really helpful to me. I know I found Al-Anon, which is for friends and families of alcoholics. It's a support group, and that has really changed my life. That's definitely given me a lot of those tools to understand myself better, and to set myself as the priority, and to set my own peace and serenity as a priority. And that's helped me navigate a lot of stuff in a positive, healthy way that I was doing in a negative, unhealthy way before. So that's been big for me. And then somatic healing and inner child work has been really, really helpful and enlightening. Also, like, I've done like some work around guides, and it's like spiritual guides and ancestors and angels, and done work in that area that's been really, really helpful for me to help know that I have a team, a spiritual team to help me to fall back on, and a higher self to be able to connect into, and like, oh, I'm not doing it all alone on that plane or this plane. And just having that, community around me has helped me through a lot of change. And not to say that I'm always, well aligned and connected. Like, sometimes I just like geek out on coffee and I'm like cleaning my house all crazy. Like, I know this is not helping me. Like, but like, whatever. Or I'll like make cookies and like eat them all. Like, I'm not like, there's no perfectionism here that exists, but,
do your water and donuts.
Yeah, water and donuts.
I think that just is such a good analogy to what you're talking about that I really embrace as well. When it's like, I think it's still this idea of like, when you change, you're gonna glow white. Like, somehow you're gonna have this, you're gonna be effervescent and you're floating, and it's like, no, I'm still gonna cry on a puddle on the floor.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna be all right. The idealized or perfected kind of idea of this somehow well-being it looks a lot of different ways. And so I loved your water and donuts.
Yeah, water and donuts, like to be grounded with water, to like come back to nature and come back to yourself and the purest essence of life, and supporting life, and have that be a part of your life. But then also, like, don't forget to have fun and like eat the donut and enjoy it and play, and like, you are in this like body and you have all these like sensations that you can drum up, and why not like explore them? Like, but as long as you have that grounded piece of you, nothing is not spiritual. It's all spiritual. Like,
there's much as it's not spiritual. Like, it's like, be irreverent. Be irreverent of everything and reverent of it at the same time. But like, it's important to kind of not put anything up too high.
Yeah.
Because it's all one substance. It's all actually one movement. It's all working for good. So you get to tune into that when you can not put anything above or below.
Yeah, absolutely.
You.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Those are some of the things that have been really helpful to me. I would say, like vulnerability has been helpful. I have a partner, a longtime partner, and he's been really, really helpful in my change. Just being really constant and open and there for me, and really supportive and really down and just really open to everything that I've gone through, all the highs and lows and explorations. And I have this tendency to be like, I'm like always like thirsty for more, and like I always want to get deeper, and I'm always like, so what are 4 things you want to do before you die? And he's like, oh my God, I just woke up, like or just like, or I'll, he's really down, and that's been helpful to have a person with me to be able to like support, and really love me deeply. That's been really, really a blessing to have that. I have to pee really bad.
Everybody stop.
Everybody hold.
Everybody hold, please. That seemed a pretty good place to break. We hope you enjoyed this resource bonus episode in its raw format.